This is a data set of every general conference talk that's ever been given. This drive contains thousands of talks from prophets and apostles that millions look to for guidance and inspiration. But until now, no one has looked at the full collection of these talks to look for patterns across 50 years of sermons. And so today, that's exactly what I'm gonna do. I'll start by collecting every talk into a single data set and then use data science to map the themes over time. From there, we're gonna test whether the messages of these talks shift with culture or if they stay consistent over time. And by the end of this video, I'll show you a free tool that I made that you can use to explore these talks with no coding required. Now, for those of you that don't know, I actually have my master's degree in data science. And something that I learned in this degree is that text can be used as data through something called natural language processing. And we can give more objectivity to things that are usually more subjective. For example, say we were looking at Amazon reviews. We would assume that reviews with 1 star use more negative words and 5-star reviews use more positive words. Well, we can use something called sentiment analysis to score each word with a positive or negative score and confirm that yes, 5-star reviews really do use more positive language. And so if we can use natural language processing with Amazon reviews, we can use it for general conference talks as well. But instead of looking for sentiment, we're going to look for themes and topics. And we can get objective answers to questions like, are leaders talking more about current issues like technology and mental health than they did in the 70s? Are core topics like faith and family holding steady, or are they being crowded out by new concerns? And most importantly, how often does Elder Uchtdorf talk about airplanes? To answer these questions and others, I'll walk you through 3 steps: scraping the talks, processing those talks to identify themes, and then visualizing the results to show patterns that would be hard to see otherwise. Okay, we are actually in the code now, and let's go through the 3 steps that I posed earlier. First, we need to collect all the conference talks into one data set. I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but this is the script that we made that takes all of the conference talks from this website and outputs it into the CSV file with about 3 million rows of data. Now, there's different issues with how the talks were formatted on the website throughout the years, and so we have this script that standardizes everything so that it's way easier to analyze everything. And that's pretty much everything from step 1. We gather the data all together and then clean it for easy analysis. But now step 2, how are we actually going to process and analyze this information and look for themes over time? I made this custom command where if I put in the word general conference and I click enter, it runs this custom tool that I mentioned earlier where I can look at words, phrases, topics, emotion, and anything else that I want from the conference talks. And say, for example, I want to know how much leaders have been talking about food storage recently. Well, I can just put in food storage, and then I can click search, and it found 17 talks that contain the phrase food storage. And then here you can see all the talks that reference it, along with a link to go read that talk, and then we can look at some different visualizations down here. We can see here on this graph the usage over time. So this is the number of talks per year that mention food storage. You can see it's been pretty sparse throughout the years, but there was a peak in 2020, probably due to COVID. And so if we want to look for different topics, this is one way that we can do it. Now, another way that we can do that is using machine learning. And this is where we get into some real natural language processing. So let me show you how this model works. So you're able to input any type of text. So I'll just say, I love my wife and dog and I think they're the best. So then in this field, we put in different topics that we want the model to identify. So I'll just say family, pets, and then something that's not related, I'll say computers. And so you can see that this model returns a score based on how confident it is that this sentence is talking about these topics. So it's confident that I'm talking about pets and family in this sentence, but not so much about house and computers. And so we're able to use the same methodology, but for every single conference talk. And so these are 47 different topics that I chose that I asked the machine learning model to classify. And we can see that agency and accountability seems to be the #1 topic, as it has 67% of all talks. Something to be aware of though is that this model is pretty small, and so I was only able to feed in about 100 words per talk, and so it took a random sample of sentences from each of the talks. And so the actual topics of the talks probably do vary a little bit more than this, but this does give us a bird's eye view of everything at the very least. So let's use all these different tools to answer the questions that I posed at the beginning of this video. So let's just start by putting in mental health into the phrase search. And so we can see down here in the usage over time graph that this exact phrase wasn't used much until the early 2000s, and then it was used more, and then spiking in 2021, and still being used almost every year since. Now, if we want to search for multiple words, I can say anxiety, depression, anxious, perfectionism. Then we'll get all of the talks that have at least one of these words. And again, looking at this graph right here, we can see that 5.56% of all talks in the President Nelson era have at least one of those words, with the next highest being President Benson, which is significantly lower. Okay, so now for the next question that I posed earlier about if speakers are talking more about technology, we're going to use use this feature that I made called Ask AI, and I'll just show you how it works really quick. I'll just say, have speakers talked more about technology in recent years? You can just use natural language, click submit. And so then what the AI does, it actually writes and executes Python code for you and then shows you the results. And so you can actually check this code yourself and see if it's hallucinating anything. But looking at it, it's just making a list of words related to tech, and then it filters for talks that contain one of these words, and then it makes a plot right here. So this looks pretty good. And you can see that it shows some of the results right here into a table, and then we actually get a graph about percentage of general conference talks mentioning technology. So we can see in 1971 that there are 0% of talks mentioning technology, but then we have a peak at around like 2015, it looks like 2014, where 25% of talks mention technology, and that is absolutely insane. But let's ask the same question but about mental health and see if we can get some better results. So I'll just say, what about mental health? It's going to write and execute some code on my computer and then visualize the results. Again, we're just going to check the code first to make sure it's not hallucinating anything. It looks like it's doing the same thing, and all these phrases look correct, and then it's just grouping and plotting the data. And so we can see that the trend is going up, but the slope of this line is extremely small at 0.01. And so let's answer the question that I posed at the beginning of this video. How often does Elder Uchtdorf talk about airplane related things? The first thing that it's doing, it's making a copy of the data frame with talks that just contain Uchtdorf in it, and then it made a list of keywords related to aviation, and then it calculates some statistics based on that. So we can see right here that there are 83 talks by Elder Uchtdorf, and 31 of them contain mentions of aviation, which gives us a 37.3% of talks with aviation references. So now I ask, how has the frequency of LGBT topics changed over the years? And looking at the code, again, it's just making a list of words and then summarizing that for us. So there were 54 talks identified with LGBT keywords. And so you can see here that it actually pretty much looks the same throughout the years. There was a spike in 2022. And so I asked it to add a line of best fit to that data. And again, we can see here that it is slightly increasing, it looks like, but the slope is basically zero. So it's more accurate to say that the trend of LGBT topics in general conference has pretty much remained the same. So now I want to know if we've been talking about temple and covenants more. It seems like to me that over the years that we have with President Nelson's emphasis on it, but now we can actually get some objective answers to see if we're actually talking about it more. Like, look at how crazy this graph is. In 1971, only about 57% of talks mentioned covenants or temples in general conference. If we compare that to 2022, 96% of every talk mentioned covenants or temples, which is absolutely insane. And in the most recent conference, 83% of talks mentioned it. And so I think we can confidently say that there has definitely been an emphasis on temples and covenants. Now, there's one last question that I want to end this video with, and my question is, what about talking about Jesus over the years? And this is what I want to leave you with. You can see here the percentage of talks mentioning Jesus. Almost every single year, 100% of the talks have mentioned Jesus Christ, with the lowest value being 96% of talks mentioning Jesus Christ. And this obviously shows that while some things like temples and covenants definitely have increased, it seems that the central message of Jesus Christ being our Savior has remained consistent from the beginning of General Conference. Now again, if you want to use this tool yourself, I'm leaving a link to my GitHub repository in the description, and you can run this on your own computer. And if you've never used GitHub before, or you're having some technical issues setting this up, if you become a member of my channel, you get access to an exclusive Discord server with me, where I can help you set everything up as well. So after 50 years of talks, let's answer the question from the beginning of this video. Do topics and themes change over time? Of course they do. We saw COVID spike in 2020. Mental health emerge as a topic in recent years, and technology showing up more frequently. But here's what stood out to me. These contemporary issues are consistently used as pathways back to the central message of the church, that Heavenly Father loves us, so we sent Jesus Christ. No matter what's going on in the world, whether it's 1971 or 2025, that core message remains remarkably consistent. Of course, leaders give specific guidance on current issues, but it seems that the solution to these issues always points back to Christ. Now, I want to end this video with two things. First, if you want to explore this data yourself, I'll leave a link below to the GitHub repository for you to be able to do this on your computer. And second, if you want to see more insights about these general conference talks, I have a full extended version of this video for my channel members, along with an exclusive Discord server that you can use to ask me any questions about the data or how to run the code. If you want to do that, become a channel member to support a small creator like me. All right, I think that's it. Bye.